We're in Denver at the Posner Center for International Development, where we have the privilege to speak with Avery Bang. Avery studied civil engineering and studio art as an undergraduate, and she received a master's degree in civil engineering from CU-Boulder. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Sarah.
Avery is the CEO of Bridges to Prosperity. What's Bridges to Prosperity?
We're a nonprofit organization that focuses in underdeveloped communities around the world in building bridges. So we go in and we train and partner with both engineers locally and also organizations and teach them how to design, build, and maintain long-span cable structures in areas where a river can be isolating from getting to school or from getting to a market, from getting to a healthcare clinic. So lifeline access.
Wow, and so you're the CEO now. How did you get involved with Bridges to Prosperity?
It started as a volunteer and finding something that I was kind of had that eureka moment of this makes sense to me. I was an undergraduate student at the University of Iowa. I did what I think every 21-year-old should do, is you get a one-way ticket to a country and you figure out what's next. So I was living in Fiji and had the opportunity to go to this island where they had no potable water, healthcare clinics were few and far between, secondary school was in one major hub, and this pedestrian bridge had been put in. And the pedestrian bridge had completely changed the way that all the people on the other side of the river were experiencing life. So now kids were going to secondary school, were able to go to a market, and it was like that, aha, that's something I could do and I feel passionate about. I returned back from Fiji, back to Iowa, and started Google searching, who does this kind of work? Like, who in the world takes on pedestrian bridges and does that super well? Lo and behold, there's this organization in Virginia, Bridges to Prosperity. So I find the guy's telephone number. I'm like, hey Ken, you're the founder of Bridges to Prosperity. I'm Avery. I'm this student in the University of Iowa. I think you should let me build a bridge. And he's like, okay, sure, no, click, Hey Ken, it's Avery again. I really think you should let me build a bridge. Here's how we're going to do it. And he's like, I don't think that makes sense. Click. So third time's charm. Third time, I'm like, Ken, I've got the resources, I've got the team, I have faculty support. I'll put together a chapter and we'll build a bridge with you if you will allow us to come and work with your team in Peru. And he was like, who are you? But essentially let us sign on to the first ever Bridges to Prosperity University chapter program. And I think from there it's all been one thing connecting to the next. For me it was about providing a service to society in a way that was very tangible and something where I could see my work in practical action and was influencing hundreds of thousands of people. So I went from a student to a volunteer to a board of directors member to convincing him I should be the first paid staff, to building a team. And last year we had over 37 million people cross bridges around the world with Bridges to Prosperity.
Avery, you must hire interns and professional engineers. Can you tell us how those processes work?
Hiring an intern is something that for us we see as a trial run to employment, and I think a lot of even much larger companies see the same. So we really look for, is this person a good fit at a personality level, at a passion level, at a technical background, personal references. The most difficult part about my job is that we get hundreds of applications for any one spot, whether that be an intern or a professional career track with us. And to mine through all very qualified applicants, really we're looking for what differentiates you. Where did you step outside that ladder? Where did you take a risk? Where did you fail? Can you speak to that in your cover letter? Can you help us understand how resilient you are? And in our environment, if we're going to send you down to Haiti and you're going to be very self-sufficient, I need to know that you've had an experience that has been very difficult, because if it's all very altruistic, I can do this, I can't wait, we really don't believe in setting people up for failure.
I think I'm hearing you say that it's important for you to see how someone overcomes failure. And so having failures is really helpful.
Absolutely. And having the ability to come back. So if you fail and if you overstep and you don't crumble and fall apart and you're able to come back together and take that next step, that's something we look for in that first stage. It's one of the key pieces that we focus on in the interview stage. Tell me how a time that you've overcome failure or that you haven't succeeded, and tell us how that went. And we really look for folks that can identify that they have failure and own it and show thoughtful action to move in a forward direction.
Any particular advice for someone who might want to work with an organization like yours?
I think if you're interested in getting into international development and you want to fancy yourself a professional career track in that direction, dedication and belief in the cause is really important. And I'm not out to tell everyone they should be about bridges. If bridges don't make sense, there's plenty of other ways to get involved. If it's agriculture, if it's solar, if it's even right here at home. There's no work that's better or worse than. But I believe that if you really want to put your heart and soul into something, and you're job searching and soul searching, put that passion first. And I think if you have the opportunity to put money second, and you're in that privileged space, that's a really huge leg up in the world. You get your foot in. 95% of us just want to get to know you and get involved, be an intern. And if you're a good fit, we'll put you into the career track. But it's a huge risk for us to take on someone career track that we don't know if it's their passion, and we haven't really seen them volunteer or be involved as an intern. So my advice would be to find that company or find that organization that gets you going in the morning, and do everything you can, even if it's trying to do a couple hours a week to get face time and to do good work for them and prove yourself so you can get your foot in the door.
Avery, when did you decide you wanted to be an engineer?
My father is an engineer and a bridge engineer, so we would tour around the country going to public works projects and getting out of the car and saying, well, what's under there? What's going on in this abutment or this steel pylon? And I remember thinking that this is pretty interesting. You get to go out, you get to be outside, you get to think about problems and solve them in very tactile ways. So when I was figuring out what to do in college and where to go, engineering was the only factor I knew, and everything else I kind of filled in. And I don't think I really knew what engineering was at that point, but I think it was a really good choice. It's opened a lot of doors for me.
What problems do you solve?
I think for me, most of the problems that I solve are people problems and money problems. So it's all about people and money. But when you get into the workplace and you're building teams and you have vision that is so much bigger than one person can achieve, it's about how do you figure out the financial resources to get there, kind of an entrepreneurial spirit sort of thing, and then how do you get the right people in the boat or the bus. And so I spend most of my time thinking about, I have this deadline, this kind of achievement gap that I need to meet. I've got 32 projects in 8 countries, working in 7 currencies. How can I build a system not only to build these projects, but to make sure that there are the right people there, that the right ownership in the local community exists, that we have the financial resource in place to make sure we don't start a project and have to stop. And I think it's kind of like a really big puzzle, whereas maybe like I got into engineering because I liked the small puzzle, and I was thinking about how do we put these things together, and it's lent itself really well for taking a step back and thinking about, well, that little puzzle actually has a lot of relevance to the big puzzle.
So has your engineering training prepared you to tackle those people and money challenges?
Absolutely. I think there's more engineering undergrads that end up as Fortune 500 CEOs than any other preparatory line of coursework, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Very rigorous coursework. There's a lot of creative freedom in the way that you end up practicing that coursework. And I think at the end of the day, you also have the ability to identify a problem and to solve that problem. And I think that a lot of other fields get really into the either identifying or solving areas, and we are that special sauce where we come together and really are a complete package. And whether it's trying to solve a problem around building a bridge or solving a problem of how to get a spaceship, like all sorts of interesting things. Or it can even be a money problem or a teamwork problem.
We like to think of engineering as a helping profession. What kinds of people do you help?
In terms of like Bridges to Prosperity, solving problems for us and helping people is about empowerment. Can we come in and can we teach you how to do the same work that we're doing And can we be behind you and supporting you in thoughtful action, as opposed to being the person out front, like, here I am, gringo, saving the day, look at me, hurrah, taking the other side and saying, as engineers, we can problem solve and solve your problems, but we can also teach you how to solve your own. And that's been a really profound experience for me personally, and certainly in the organization as well.
How do you use what you learned in college in your current role?
I think it was an opportunity in college to learn how to work in teams, but it was a classroom activity that really put together the idea that you're only as big as those around you. If individually each person isn't showing up to the table, you're only as big as that lowest common denominator. And I think having a background in art as well as engineering brought in a bit of a more humanitarian spin on my undergrad that has served me really well in thinking about people and psychology and how to build teams.
Your work must require collaboration with lots of different people. Can you tell us about some of the people that you work with?
Collaboration is at the root of all progress, I believe, and a piece of where we are here today in the Posner Center for International Development just 3 years ago was an idea that collaboration is an important thing to invest resource and time into. And this center is the first center in the United States to focus on international development with over 55, 56 organizations working in 80 countries around the world. We are the global experts in bridges, and there are global experts in solar and in water right next door. And we come across some of the same challenges. And even if my team's designing a detail of how cable is connecting to a tower and how you're hanging the suspenders and how do you get the deck laid in what sequence, the guys right next door are thinking about how do you get a treadle pump to have mechanical suctioning of water out of the ground without having any electricity. And there's a lot of the same kinds of human-centered design processes that we all have to use in order to do this work effectively. And to be in a collaborative center where we're saying we don't know it all. We have a lot to learn from you. Maybe you have something to learn from us. I think speaking on behalf of Bridges to Prosperity is a game changer and something that we need more of in our world.
We have a number of students who may be interested in international development. What kind of advice would you give them as they're starting their undergraduate career?
Study abroad, I think, is a key factor. We bring in lots of interns and lots of young people that are inspired by this kind of work. But I believe getting a first-hand experience to go live and work abroad and spend time in the field where it is that you want to work is something that helps immensely. A lot of folks get the idea you have to do it while you're still a student. I think you could also do it after the fact, after you graduate. An internship and a placement straight out of school over a summer, getting involved with a club or chapter. Like at CU-Boulder, we have a Bridges to Prosperity chapter, for example. But get an experience firsthand where you can go and get your feet wet, hands dirty, before you try to go jump in after you graduate is really important.
What's the coolest thing you get to do in your job?
I think that's the coolest thing that I get to do in my job is to wake up every day and love what I do. I get to walk to work with my dog and have my dog come sit in the office, and I get to talk to people around the world who believe in this as much, if not more, than I do, to get to have the unique opportunity to get on a plane and go experience some of that firsthand. But there's not a single day that I wake up and I'm not extremely motivated and feel that the outcome of my product that day is going to in some way have a meaningful impact in the world.
How do you use math in your job?
I used a lot of math in my first few years as I was building Bridges to Prosperity. We create a set of manuals where a lot of things around design referencing codes and different loading conditions and how you might do load combinations in different environments, how you reference even local codes and conditions and material availability and lack of material quality control. And so we did a lot of parametric analysis with different types of geotechnical soil, in situ soil conditions, with assuming you have lower grade steel, thinking that your concrete, instead of 35 or 4,500 psi, might be 1,000 psi. So going back through in the framework of using an analytical approach to be able to create a standard and a kind of how-to manual, if you will. Today, I use very little math other than in the financial space of putting out budgets and forecasts and actuals. One of my favorite things is my weekly meeting with my technical team of going back through and being like, okay, well, how does that influence if you do cross bracing or if you've got lateral torsional buckling, or what happens in this sort of dynamic loading state? I'm not nearly as smart as they are, but I get to get my toes wet every so often. And there's definitely an analytical math component to that.
Can you tell us about a time in your education or in your career when you weren't successful at something or maybe failed at something?
Oh yeah, I fail more than I succeed. You gotta have some pretty tough skin, I think, to fancy yourself an entrepreneur. But I fail every day many, many times. I get told no many, many times. I often walk into a room and there's often this, who are you, where's your boss thing. And especially as a young female coming into a position of authority, and I think I try to demand respect, but also give it where it's due. I think that oftentimes it takes me 2 or 3 or 4 times of coming back to the table and saying, well, here's what I've got to offer. I know this didn't make sense last time, but here's what traction we've made and how I can prove that return on the investment that maybe I couldn't have proven before. It's everything from trying to get a new company to be a sponsor, to trying to get the best people on my team, to knowing that you have failures of understanding and community. A lot of times we overlook a lot of the small idiosyncrasies of culture. We have failures of misunderstanding how a detail that we draw on paper is going to be built. We have all sorts of failures, but I think our culture as an organization is about learning and learning from failure. And we believe it's eminently important to not only bring forth your failures and talk about them, but create action, a thoughtful action around how to make sure that that doesn't happen again or how we can learn from that.
Avery, what advice do you have for college students?
Stick with it. I think for a while, when I got on that one-way flight to go live in Fiji, I had a moment of maybe this isn't for me. I don't identify with the culture of engineering students in my brain at that time, which I now see as being not true. But I think I want to do something else. I'm an artist, I'm a creative, I'm a athlete, I don't know what I am. I think it took a moment of eureka for me of knowing that I could do meaningful work and coming back and having the discipline to get it done. That really was a catalyst for me finding that this work is extremely important and immensely valuable and self-fulfilling. There's that peak hump, I always call it, like that sophomore, junior year. I was like, what am I doing? This is awful. And I think that perseverance and sticking with it really is something I cannot imagine what my life would be like if I hadn't stuck through it.
What do you wish someone would have told you when you were a college student?
I think as a college student, I really had this false idea that the decisions I was making right then were the end-all be-all, and this is going to somehow be the end of my learning, and I was carving myself into a rut that it was immovable, and I believe that to be quite the opposite. I believe that in academia it's really important to get the building blocks and to have that foundation, but it's just that. It's you're building your foundation, and getting through it is such a huge opportunity because you have to step up on that next level, but it's in no unilateral direction. I mean, I feel like I'm an entrepreneur, I fancy myself a bit of a business person, a philanthropist, certainly an engineer, an artist, and I think if I would have written some statement of purpose down on my day of graduation, I would have tightly aligned with I'm a civil engineer going into structural, like I thought for some reason that was the end space, and in reality I think it's just a preparatory pushing out to the real world. So I wish I would have known that before I went into it.
You're an engineer, an entrepreneur, a CEO. What do you do for fun?
Well, we live in Colorado, so I spend a lot of time in the weekends up in the mountains. Snowboarder, I call myself a jogger, because if you're in Colorado and you're a runner, you're like legit. I'm a jogger. I'm also a casual climber, a casual mountain biker, things casual. Got figured out pretty quickly. If you call yourself a climber, you start getting like, 30 points of like, oh no, no, no. So I do everything for fun and casual, but I've got a great dog who spends a lot of time with me in the outdoors and staying out of trouble.
Avery, thank you so much for inviting us to the Posner Center for International Development and for talking with us today.
My pleasure. It's such a pleasure. Thank you.